Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program and our Interplanetary Chase. In the previous episode, we have successfully put a Kerbal on the moon and back and achieved a hefty chunk of science, being 680-ish. Now, what we need to do today is, firstly, we need to spend our science points, because obviously that's the point of this game mode, isn't it? So, we're going to have a look at some different rocketry parts, some different fuel tanks, and I think our requirements to obviously visit some other planets needs some bigger engines and some bigger tanks, because you saw in the previous episode, but we slightly struggled to find some particular parts that would fit our current kind of fuel tanks, and our propulsion means ended up being an engine plate with a few more engines kind of attached to it. So currently looking through the propulsion systems, and we do decide to research that for a cost of 90 science. We would like some more stability, being gyroscopes and reaction wheels, so we're going to do flight control. Now we're having a look at precision propulsion and the other two nodes, which may be able to get us to nuclear propulsion at some point, which will be very, very helpful. Now, obviously, precision propulsion does have the separatrons, which we are in desperate need for, so we're going to research that for 160. Now we're having a look at the different electrics, kind of thermal control systems, high gain antennas, drone cores, and we are absolutely going to be researching that because we'll be putting that to good use later in this episode. Precision engineering, different communitrons, different relay antennas. You got smaller decouplers, which we were actually after when we were fiddling with our launch escape system a couple of episodes ago here. Miniaturization, I'm not sure about that. Space exploration though, look at this. We get ladders, we get rover wheels, we get different parts we can put in, I believe, inventories and containers. Advanced landing perhaps, bigger legs, we get rotors, medium landing gear, bigger heat shields, with some robotics. Trying to determine if we need some fairings here. We do go for advanced construction in the end, taking us down to 212. Advanced fuel systems, perhaps we get some bigger fuel tanks and some adapters to go with it, although I think it's probably safe to leave it for now. So what we're going to do today is we've proven that we can take a Kerbal to the moon. Now, what we need to do is, because of the amount of work that went into doing that, I think it's only fair that we build a communications network, meaning we don't need to rely on Kerbals every single mission and obviously put our glorious space frogs at risk. So, what we're going to do is we're going to firstly try to put together some sort of ComSat deployer, given our kind of current tech level. It might be a little bit janky, but ultimately, if it works, it works. So, as you can see, we've taken our kind of basic go-to science module with our service bay and our mystery goo and all that good stuff. Put a component on top of that. We've added another reaction wheel and a battery in order to keep us pointing the right way during atmospheric re-entry. And we've put a decoupler on top of that, and a tricoupler, followed by some more stack separators, which will be where we will be eventually putting our satellites. Heat shield on the bottom here, wonderful. Going to put a big decoupler, and now we need to start building our rocket stage itself. I think we'll have a few stages where we may need to do a bit of orbital manoeuvring in order to assist with the satellites' kind of manoeuvring, where we don't really have the miniaturization and the tiny components yet in order to do that as we should do. Something like ion engines would be ideal, however I think we are a while away from unlocking those, so we'll see what happens. Now, we're looking for an engine to slap on the bottom here, and I was looking for an engine plate as well to see if we might be able to do what we did last episode. However, ultimately we are going to put an adapter and then an engine plate. I'm going to put that on the boat tail side, and we're going to give that 4 attachment nodes. Now we can find a smaller engine, well, not a smaller engine, but an engine of which we can move to a compact size owing to restock here. And we have plenty of power, as you can see, Just move us up slightly so it looks like they're supposed to be there, which gives us a current thruster weight of 1.37. So it's a little bit on the lower side. However, it will go up, and that is the important thing. Now, I did notice that kind of attachment to the upper stage did look a little bit ugly, so I think we're going to try and place some adapters here to make it look like it's supposed to be there. I don't consider it cheaty by any means, because ultimately I would kind of expect each component to be designed for the vessel of which it's being attached to, if that makes any sense. Anyway, enough of that. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at building a fairing to contain our actual kind of manned control units here. It does look a little bit cheesy. Unfortunately, we can't cover that top bit just yet, as we don't have fairings which are quite big enough. What I was trying to do was I was trying to kind of cover up the whole thing up until the end of the tricoupler there, where the stack separators are. However, because it's not circular, I did actually kind of test this before this episode, I couldn't make it work. Anyway, with that done, what we're doing now is we're going to look at building the satellites themselves. I did build these satellites with a little bit of a design flaw. Comment below if you managed to point it out. If not, I will tell you at some point in this episode, because a little bit foolish, but it's not too bad of a problem. Ultimately, we get them to where they need to be, and they do their jobs, which is good. So, what we're trying to do is currently we're just trying to extend the body a little bit, so the body, or better yet, the antennas don't go past the body. So we're adding some basic reflectrons here just to ensure we manage to maintain control, followed by some high gain antennas. Wonderful. As you can see, they point upwards as they should. Well, to kind of point forwards though. However, there was a little bit of a bug here, as you can see. For some reason, they're not wanting to play ball when it comes to symmetry. However, I believe it should work. Placing some Communitron 16s just next to the probe core to assist with acting as a relay. And ultimately, we are going to ditch these antennas, just bring out some new ones, make sure they come out as they should. Auto strut, wonderful. Now, satellites need power, and thankfully we've only just managed to research some solar panels. They might not be the best, however they should be enough, they should be adequate for our use case. And as you can see, we're just trying to line those up nicely on the actual body of our satellite here. So far so good. So now we're just going to set a few action groups. Number one being to deploy the retractable antennas here. And one last thing, I'm going to add a couple of batteries just in case we end up on the dark side of the planet for too long. We want to ensure that we do have some sort of power reserve. Now, I did forget I didn't forget. I don't think I showed it, but I did set the engine as the root part of the satellite, meaning we can kind of import it into another vessel here, as you can see, and attach it to the top. Now, here I am trying to fiddle around with some possible fairing designs to see if we can possibly fit these satellites in at all. As you can see, we possibly could. However, I think it looks a little bit weird. We're trying to join up two fairings here, but ultimately then it just looks like it's not supposed to be there, which kind of defeats the point. So ultimately, I think we are just going to cover up the manned command pod there, and unfortunately we'll have to leave the top bit as it is. We will need to be quite careful when it comes to the ascent profile, because I imagine that's going to make a lot of drag, so it might not be the most efficient ascent profile. However, as long as we pass the Kerbal line, then we should be able to circularise, and it should be fairly straightforward from there. Now, as you can see, just sorting out our staging here, going to deploy these satellites kind of clockwise to ensure that we can predict which order they're going to come off. And just for the sake of making sure that we do have enough oomph to get into orbit, we're going to add a couple of more boosters here. I did find these interesting ones. It looked like they're a little bit similar to Vostok. I think these are from the DLCs. So we're adding some Bobcat engines here with a nice little boat tail design. Once again, owing to restock. Make sure that's all staged as it should be. under full, and we're going to get Bill to fly this one, owing to his lack of experience here. It's quite a simple mission. Now, as you can see, going up, we have installed a couple of visual mods. We've installed BlackRack's volumetric clouds along with ToughFX and BlackRack's profile there, and I gotta say, it looks absolutely stunning. It's getting to the point where KSP1 is looking more similar to KSP2, whilst, you know, being so much better in terms of performance and optimization. It's a bit of a shame about Kerbal Space Program 2, I gotta say, but, you know, with a KSP killer on the horizon, being KSA, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, Kids to Space Agency, so keep an eye out for that. Anyway, as you can see, we were managing our throttle a little bit. We've got rid of that first stage. Now we're in the upper kind of atmosphere here. We don't necessarily need to worry as much about possibly flipping over. Now, our apoapsis is currently 75 kilometres, so we have made it above Kerbin's atmosphere, or Kerbin's atmosphere, better yet. Going to point retrogrades, where we have pretty much no fuel left on that stage. We're just going to get rid of it and continue burning with our circularization stage here. Bill looking very happy in the bottom right corner here. I believe we had this, not issue, but this kind of thing in the previous episode where the Poodle engine is very efficient, however it's got a very high ISP but not a very high kind of thrust, so as a result we're having to burn it at a bit of an incline here to push away our time to apoapsis and ensure that we're able to circularize as we should do. Now, as you can see, pushing out our periapsis to around 100 kilometers, or our apoapsis even. Our periapsis is still in the negatives, however it shouldn't be like that for long. We're just coasting up to our apoapsis now, and here we go. Periapsis is now positive, and it's above 70 kilometers, meaning we are now in a nice little orbit around Kerbin, currently looking at 102 by 100 kilometers. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to push out our apoapsis to roughly, I would say, maybe 1 million. And what we're going to do is we're going to increase our orbital altitude here, because we're going to try and deploy our satellites in thirds, in kind of the third sections around Kerbin's orbit, so to speak. I don't think that makes much sense when I try to explain it, but ultimately you'll see what I try to do. It's difficult because when it comes to communication satellites, the way you deploy them, there's a lot of numbers involved, and to say that I haven't done the maths would be an understatement. I'm just doing this in a way that may or may not work, but ultimately if I wasn't happy with it, then, you know, I probably wouldn't be narrating this episode now, would I? So you'll see what happens. Anyway, as you can see, our apoapsis is slowly being pushed out to 1 million. There we go. Now, if we time warp towards our apoapsis here, once again we need to burn. We are actually going to stop there and do a few experiments, and it says Fiscui feels right at home, and we seem to be in space high above Kerbin here. I don't think we've had a chance to do much science in this particular part yet, so that's nice. You know, even if this mission does fail, then we will have a little bit of science to take away from it. Now we need to point prograde once again, as we are actually at our apoapsis and we are slowly beginning our descent, so we need to fire that engine ASAP in order to push our periapsis back up to 1 million as well. As you can see, orbital speed is increasing, and as you can see, we're a little bit uneven with our periapsis now, because we've made it past our apoapsis and I kind of messed it up a little bit. However, it's not all bad. What we're going to do is we can just burn retrogrades when we reach our periapsis to bring our apoapsis back down to a reasonable number. Although, having said that, we are not too concerned about that, because it's about time we start deploying our satellites. Now, can you see the design flaw on this particular vessel? Like I mentioned in the vehicle assembly building, we seem to be having a little bit of inertia, which usually wouldn't be a problem. However, the protocol we've used has no SAS. So despite the fact that we've attached a small inline reaction wheel to this, we have no no assisted stability, which means as a result, our burns are a little bit everywhere. However, thankfully, we will make this work. As of now, we're just trying to get a 1 million by 100,000 orbit going on here, and I think we've done so quite nicely. And what we're going to do now is switch back to the ComSat deployer here, and we're going to kind of add a maneuver where we want to deploy the next satellite, just so we know roughly how much time we have until said burn. Slowly coasting up to our maneuver node here. Perfect, so we're going to stop the time warp there and get rid of that maneuver node because we're roughly where we need to be now. So we're going to firstly switch off our other engine, fire off the other satellite, deploy all the antennas to ensure we maintain connection and therefore control, quickly rename this particular ship so we know what it is. And once again, we need to point retrograde to decrease our apoapsis, or our periapsis better yet, and start that burn. Very wiggly, very kind of Kerbal, however, I think we've already proven it can work, so it should be okay. Periapsis slowly going down, 100,000. We've overshot slightly, so we need to slightly correct that. Actually, you know what? I think that's fine. It's not a perfect orbit of which it's being deployed from in the first instance, so I can't really complain. Once again, switch back to the deployer. We have one satellite left, and we're going to deploy it roughly here. So we're going to continue our time warp. Here we are. And I think it's time that we fire off that last satellite. Once again, deploy that. Deploy all the antennas, rename this vessel, point the satellite retrogrades, or at least try to, where this reaction wheel is so jittery. There we go, time warp just to stop our inertia there, perfect. Now we're pointing the right way, we can continue to execute our manoeuvre as intended. Slowly pushing our periapsis down. Wonderful. We've overshot ever so slightly, so we're just going to correct that, and now we've completely overcooked it. So once again, slight burn just to ensure that our periapsis is where it should be. That'll do nicely. So we're going to shut down that engine, and what I need to do is, that reminded me that I need to shut off the engines of the other probes as well, because obviously we don't want to accidentally adjust the throttle and end up deorbiting our own communication network. That would not be ideal by any stretch of the imagination. So here we go, just making sure all the engines are off, which we've done. Switching back to our deployer now, and now it's just a matter of getting Bill back home safely. So where we're going to be deorbiting, we're going to point prograde and fire off the tricoupler, because remember, that was on a stack separator. We did that so we won't be hauling around any extra mass. Now we're going to point retrograde here and begin coasting around to our periapsis, the lowest point of our orbit, as we want to bring our apoapsis down as well. Fire the engine there, and it's happening very quickly, as you can see. Now we're going to attempt a little bit of an aero brake here, because I don't want to burn up in the atmosphere like we almost did on return from our moon mission. So I think a periapsis of around 55 kilometers or so should be reasonably kind of good. So time warping now, and we may or may not end up on the dark side of Kerbin here, so we're going to ensure that the engine hits the atmosphere first, so that kind of bottom stage can take the brunt of any heating effects. There is an EVA report we can do, so we're absolutely going to be doing that, where we're not in the atmosphere just yet. Collect all the experiments. Apparently there's nothing to store. Being honest, I'm not entirely sure how that works, but that's not the point. Ultimately, if we can get some science, then we cannot complain. Wonderful. Right, so once again, flight computer, point us retrograde, thank you. We're descending very, very quickly. However, where we are travelling at such a high speed, ultimately, the point of an aero brake is to not deorbit yourself. Well, it is occasionally, but in this case, we simply want to use the friction from the atmosphere to essentially skip off of it while a friction slows us down slightly, so we should be able to deorbit ourselves relatively unscathed in our next pass. And as you can see, our apoapsis is decreasing. However, it's going down very slowly and we're already ascending again, so I think sooner rather than later we might want to start using our engines here to there we go, to push down our apoapsis, because I think we didn't go deep enough into the atmosphere. And once again, we are back into space now. We've skipped back up over 70 kilometers. However, our periapsis is now within the atmosphere, as you can see. And I think we might be landing on the dark side, which I don't particularly want to do. So we're going to point prograde and push that outwards a little bit, just to ensure that we do kind of land in the light sides. And we have completely overcooked it once again, so we're going to push our periapsis down again. There we go. We will get there. Now what I wanted to do here was I wanted to start burning and detach the command module as to not stay attached to the rocket. However, that completely backfired, and we managed to pin ourselves to the top of that stage. However, it ran out of fuel and we managed to kind of push ourselves away from it. So, you know, have you ever seen a more Kerbal rocket? Actually, don't answer that, because I know what the answer will be. Anyway, as you can see, we are now in Kerbin's atmosphere for one final time in this particular mission. You'll see why I put the reaction wheel and that additional battery where we'd otherwise have an inline mystery goo unit. Because during our return from the moon mission last episode, we almost lost control and inevitably almost burned up in the atmosphere. However, I think we're okay. We are a little bit wobbly, however it's nothing we can't manually kind of correct for. And we are spinning a little bit now, but that's completely fine, we're slow enough. And we're now pointing directly downwards, which I don't want, because usually we can't correct that. So we're going to pop your parachutes, pull the nose back up to where it needs to be. They're looking very pleased. Parachutes open. Wonderful. And from here, it's just a matter of time warping down to the surface of Kerbin. Get a nice little screenshot while we're at it. Lovely. And recovering this vessel. And remember, we did manage to perform a couple of experiments in space high above Kerbin's. We'll have a little bit of science to take away from this as well. So, touchdown and recover vessel. 82.2 science earned, taking us up to 294. Not too bad. Bill is ready for his next assignment, and he's actually unlocked a few ribbons here, being Research 2 ribbon, Landing on Kerbin ribbon, G-Force 4 ribbon, nice, Mach 3 ribbon, Dangerous EVA ribbon, that was during our descent, Kerbin EVA ribbon, very good, and Kerbin Orbital EVA when we did that EVA report. Wonderful! Now we're going to warp to sunrise here, just to make a point of finishing this episode at daytime, because it's absolutely stunning with all these visual mods. Wow. And what we're going to do now is we're going to visit the tracking station, because unfortunately that mission has left us with a little bit of orbital debris which we'll need to terminate or stop tracking. Kessler syndrome, never heard of it, and we never will do, because reasons of which I shall not disclose. We are not getting rid of this debris. No idea what you're talking about. Now, toggle relays, as you can see, this is our communications network. Do a little bit of time warp so you can see what I was trying to achieve here. But ultimately, it's not the best, but it works. We're talking to each other, and I should talk to other vessels. So, on that note, thank you guys ever so much for watching. If you did enjoy today's episode, please do like and subscribe for more content like this, and I will talk to you in the next one.